Okay, so we're back today, getting a couple minutes late start here, just for the nature of our class. But I went home last week to do to upload the video and all that. But I usually watch a few minutes of it just to make sure. And apparently last week when I went to share screen, I didn't complete the process, and so it showed us, just us. There was no scripture on screen or anything. So I had to redo the video when I got home last week, which is always fun because I've got to make space for 45 minutes or so. So anyway, for the next few weeks, we're going to be jumping around quite a bit just because the text is not chronological, and I'm trying to keep it kind of chronological. The way the Kings and the Chronicles, of course, the Chronicles is only written from a Southern point of view, so it really doesn't factor in too much, although there's a few things that are out of order. But the Kings, the way the Kings does it is, if you read through Kings, you end up with a king of the north, and then a king of the south, and then the next king of the south, and then a king of the north, and then a king of the north, and so it's one king, two kings, two kings, two kings, two kings, and it does it like that. And so you end up with three kings during the reign of one king in the other place, and it gets mismatched. So in order to kind of keep that, the chapters kind of jump around a little bit, so we can keep chronological order. I think it makes sense the way I've done it. Okay, just giving y'all a heads up. So we're actually going to go over 6 kings this week. 3 kings in the north, 3 kings in the south. I say go over them. They're going to be part of the narrative. So we go ahead and share our screen so I can tell y'all exactly where we are. I know we're in First Kings. I think it's 12 or 14, one of those. When I share screen, we'll know for certain. Let me make sure I'm sharing it correctly this time. Okay, share screen up at the top. It tells me it's shared. Good. Okay, let me put it in presentation mode, and away we go. So part 12. Yeah, we're in First Kings chapter 14, and it is correlated with Second Chronicles 12. And there's a few minor word differences or additions, but nothing that really changes the narrative. If it does, I'll jump over for that. So First Kings chapter 14, starting in verse 21. Now Rehoboam, remember last week we were with Jeroboam. As it ended, Jeroboam's son has died. Jeroboam in the north, his wife disguised herself, but it didn't trick Abijah. He had already been given a pre-warning that she was coming. And anyway, as soon as she stepped back into the town of Tirzah, which is where their capital was at the time, the child died, and then he was buried, and there was a great mourning. So now it has jumped to the south, and we're with Rehoboam. And Rehoboam, son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city that the Lord had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. His mother's name was Naamah, the Ammonite. Now that should be a clue to you right there. This is one of Solomon's wives who is from Ammon, one of their enemies. Judah did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. That is not a good start. Now, I will say verse 14 on 2 Chronicles 12 says he did evil, for he did not set his heart to seek the Lord. That's the one big difference there, is he chose not to serve the Lord. When we jump back to verse 1 of 2 Chronicles 12, I told you we're going to be jumping around a lot. When the rule of Rehoboam was established and he grew strong, he abandoned the law of the Lord and all Israel with him. So now, 2 Chronicles 11. Yeah, told you we're jumping back. Rehoboam took as his wife Mahalath, daughter of Jeremoth, son of David, and Abihail, daughter of Eliab, son of Jesse. You see where this is all going now? They're marrying cousins. She bore him sons, Jeush, Shemariah, and Zaham. How would you like naming the kid Zaham? Any of those. After he took Maacah, daughter of Absalom, remember Absalom, right? Who bore him, oh, I'm sorry, after her, he took Maacah, daughter of Absalom, who bore him Abijah, Attai, Ziza, and Shelemith. Rehoboam loved Maacah, daughter of Absalom, more than all his other wives and concubines. He took 18 wives and 60 concubines and became the father of 28 sons and 60 daughters. Rehoboam appointed Abijah, son of Maacah, as chief prince among his brothers, for he intended to make him king. So Abijah is already a favorite, and he's not the firstborn. We've seen that a lot in the Bible, where the non-firstborn is the favored, but he's also the. We'll get into it in a minute. Actually, I think we get with it next week. But anyway, Maacah. Abijah ends up being the great grandson of Absalom. Just follow anyway. So he dealt wisely and distributed some of his sons through all the districts of Judah and Benjamin. In all the fortified cities, he gave them abundant provisions and found many wives for them. So that was to avoid conflict, just like Solomon did. It was to avoid conflict. But he had 28 sons and 60 daughters. So
60 daughters.
yeah, so right. Can you imagine? Right. But it does say that he dealt wisely. So he was a good leader. He just wasn't a good spiritual leader, at least for his own people. Okay, because he wasn't a very good leader when it came to the workforce, the conscripted workforce, because he ended up taxing them to secede. 1 Kings chapter 14. Judah provoked him. I think it says they, but I put in Judah just to prove, show who we're talking about here. Provoked him. Who's him, do you think? That would be
Abijah.
God. It would be God in this case. Judah provoked him to jealousy with their sins that they committed more than all that their ancestors had done. For they also built for themselves high places, pillars, and sacred poles on every high hill and under every green tree. There were also illicit priests in the land. They committed all the abominations of the nations that the Lord had driven out before the people of Israel. In the 5th year of King Rehoboam, King Shishak of Egypt came up against Jerusalem. Now, a little history about Shishak. Shishak the first founded the Egyptian or Libyan dynasty, the 22nd dynasty. His raid into Palestine in this year, which is around 925, is well attested on the Ammon temple reliefs at Thebes or Karnak. Remember Karnak the Magnificent? Okay. From the 150 place names that are recorded there at Thebes, his aim seems to have been to reassert Egyptian control over the main trade routes throughout Palestine and the Negev. So Negev and Negev, B and V are the same letter in Aramaic. So you may see it either way. But that's just a little idea of what's going on in Egypt. Oh, where did my cursor go? Okay. With going back up to here, came up against Jerusalem with 1,200 chariots. We're in 2 Chronicles chapter. Yeah. With 1,200 chariots and 60,000 cavalry. A countless army came with him from Egypt. Libyans, Sukkim, and Cushites. He took the fortified cities of Judah and came as far as Jerusalem. Then the prophet Shemaiah came to Rehoboam and to the officers of Judah who had gathered at Jerusalem because of Shishak and said to him, "Thus says the Lord, you abandoned me, so I have abandoned you to the hand of Shishak." Then the officers of Israel and the king humbled themselves and said, "The Lord is in the right." Oh, well, that's nice. When the Lord saw that they had humbled themselves, the word of the Lord came to Shemaiah saying, "They have humbled themselves. I will not destroy them, but I will grant them some deliverance. And my wrath shall not be poured out on Jerusalem by the hand of Shishak." Now, this is the same prophet, Shemaiah. It's the same prophet who discouraged Rehoboam from attacking Israel just after they had seceded. Okay,
I have a question.
Yep.
Was Abraham originally from Cush?
he was from Ur.
Was it Isaiah, one of the prophets? I think it was one of the prophets.
We, yeah, I don't have an answer for you directly. I don't want to lie to you, but Abraham was from the town of Ur. Because he couldn't pronounce it.
His father wasn't from Cush, was
Oh,
he? His father wasn't from Cush. was
well,
he?
Cush was the name of a person originally, back during, leading up to the building of the Tower of Babel. Cush was the name of a person, gave birth to a boy named Nimrod. Anybody remember Nimrod? Nimrod was a great warrior. You know, that's all that's said about Nimrod, you know, that kind of thing.
Would a land have been named after him?
Well, Cush is Ethiopia.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Nevertheless, they shall be his servants. This is the sum deliverance. Okay. Nevertheless, they shall be his servants, so that they may know the difference between serving me and serving the kingdoms of other lands. So King Shishak of Egypt came up against Jerusalem. And so they were able to survive the onslaught, but this is the sum deliverance. You know, that's the sum deliverance. He took away the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house. He took everything. He also took away all the shields of gold that Solomon had made. Now, this is within 5 years of Solomon's death. All that Solomon had done, and one attack by Egypt has wiped out just about all the accoutrements that Solomon had done. Each of the large shields would have been worth in today about $30 million. Well, I'm sorry, not each, total. 200 large shields would equate to about $30 million in today's money. The 300 small shields that Solomon had done would equate to about 23 million. So,
Wow.
so $53 million stolen. King Shishak. So King Rehoboam made shields of bronze instead and committed them to the hands of the officers of the guard who kept the door of the king's house. As often as the king went into the house of the Lord, the guard carried them and brought them back to the guard room. Now, a little addition from Chronicles, because he humbled himself, the wrath of the Lord turned from him so as not to destroy them completely. Moreover, conditions were good in Judah. It's like saying, you know, they took all this stuff, but they're gonna be okay. Nice of the chronicler to do that. Basically, King Rehoboam is now in this frame of mind that he's looking at image over substance. What did the shields do? Gold was too heavy to carry into battle, so they were completely just for show.
No one knows though.
But because they were stolen, he had to have some semblance of show, and so he made shields out of bronze. So now the rest of the acts of Rehoboam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the king of Judah? There was, I don't know whether it is or not. We don't know where that book is. There was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continually. So for 17 years. Rehoboam slept with his ancestors and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. His mother's name was Naamah the Ammonite. His son Abijam succeeded him. So the plan was for Abijam, the favored, to take over as the king, and that apparently did. That apparently happened. On to 1 Kings chapter 15 now. Now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, so son of Nebat, Abijam began to reign over Judah. He reigned for 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother name was Maacah, daughter of Absalom. Abishalom. He committed all the sins that his father did before him. His heart was not true to the Lord his God, like the heart of his father David. Now it's funny that it would say it has Maacah, daughter of Abishalom, which is just another saying for Absalom. But over in the Chronicles, it gives a better idea of who she really was. His mother's name was Micaiah. Maacah, just different versions of the same name, daughter of Uriah of Gibeah. Now that makes more sense since Absalom was actually her grandfather, not her father. So it seems like Absalom had a son or had a daughter that married Uriah of Gibeah, and from that marriage, Maacah or Micaiah was born.
That's a lot like Mike.
Yeah, yeah, they all mean the same kind of thing, which means who is like God. Thank you.
You can.
Yeah. Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem. Now that just means that he kept his presence in Jerusalem. Sending his son after him and establishing Jerusalem, because David did what was right in the sight of the Lord and did not turn aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. It's funny that they mentioned Uriah, but not Bathsheba, which, the war begun between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continued all the days of his life. There was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. So the war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continued through Rehoboam's son Abijah. Is what it is. Abijah engaged in battle. Oh, sorry, we're in 2 Chronicles chapter 13 now. I told you we're jumping back and forth. This took a lot of prep work. So Abijah engaged in battle, having an army of valiant warriors, 400,000 picked men, and Jeroboam picked up his line of battle against him with 800,000 picked mighty warriors. Then Abijah stood on the slope of Mount Zemaraim, that is in the hill country of Ephraim, and said, "Listen to me, Jeroboam and all Israel. Do you not know that the Lord God of Israel gave the kingship over Israel forever to David and his sons by a covenant of salt?" That was the threshing floor. Yet Jeroboam, son of Nebat, a servant of Solomon, son of David, rose up and rebelled against his Lord. And certain worthless scoundrels gathered around him and defied Rehoboam, son of Solomon, when Rehoboam was young and irresolute. He could not withstand them. We get a lot of numbers up here, 400,000, warriors, 800,000 warriors. These are all multiples of 40. And of course, the number 40 just means a lot. And so Abijah has a lot of soldiers. Jeroboam has twice as many. Well, Abijah gives a very selective view of history because he is what they call gaslighting. He is putting all the reason for this war between them two is because of you, Jeroboam. It was you who started all this. No, it was his dad. It was Abijah's dad that started it. So anyway, and so he continues on. And now you think that you can withstand the kingdom of the Lord in the hand of the sons of David, because you are a great multitude and have with you those golden calves that Jeroboam made as gods for you. Have you not driven out the priests of the Lord, the descendants of Aaron and the Levites, and made priests for yourselves like the peoples of other lands? Whoever comes to be consecrated with a young bull or 7 rams becomes a priest of what are no gods. But as for us, the Lord is our God, and we have not abandoned him. Wrong. We have priests ministering to the Lord who are descendants of Aaron and Levites for their service. So he's got that right. But we have not abandoned him. Well, they did several times already. But of course, he's building up we're righteous because we got all priests. They offer to the Lord every morning and every evening burnt offerings and fragrant incense, set out the rows of bread on the table of pure gold, and care for the golden lampstand so that its lamps may burn every evening. For we keep the charge of the Lord our God, but you have abandoned him. This is written, again, this is in Chronicles. This is written from the southern kingdom. These items probably weren't there because King Shishak stole them. He took all the gold. See, God is with us at our head, and his priests have their battle trumpets to sound the call to battle against you, O Israelites. Do not fight against the Lord, the God of your ancestors, for you cannot succeed. Jeroboam had sent an ambush around to come on them from behind. Thus his troops were in front of Judah, and the ambush was behind them. When Judah turned, the battle was in front of them and behind them. They cried out to the Lord, and the priests blew the trumpets. Now, while Abijah is making this big and passionate speech, you might as well give up. We're going to win because we got God on our side. We got all the priests. While he's talking and talking and talking, Jeroboam has sent half his troops around to the other side, and that's what's happened. Now, this was a dishonorable military tactic. Battles in ancient Near East, they faced each other face to face. And often they had a warrior versus warrior. That's the David and Goliath kind of story. That's why Goliath, instead of endangering all of their troops, they would settle a battle with just one-on-one combat. So this was and the reason it was also dishonorable is there were negotiations that were still going on. Of course, if you want to call them negotiations, Abijah wouldn't stop talking long enough to negotiate, but they're still talking at this point. Then the people of Judah raised the battle shout, and when the people of Judah shouted, God defeated Jeroboam and all Israel before Abijah and Judah. Now notice who defeated the big army. It was God. It wasn't Judah, it was God. The Israelites fled before Judah, and God gave them into their hands. Abijah and his army defeated them with great slaughter. 500,000 picked men of Israel fell slain. Now, how many did they start with? 800,000.
Wow. Wow.
Thus, the Israelites were subdued at that time, and the people of Judah prevailed because they relied on the Lord, the God of their ancestors. Abijah pursued Jeroboam and took cities from him. Bethel with its villages, and Jeshanah with its villages, and Ephron with its villages. Jeroboam did not recover his power in the days of Abijah. The Lord struck him down, and he died. But Abijah strengthened himself. He took 14 wives and became the father of 22 sons and 16 daughters. So Jeroboam's reign ends, although I think we got a little bit more about him here. Yeah, the rest of that's really the only big story we have of Abijah. He only reigned for 3 years. So
When you slaughter them,
the rest of the acts of Abijah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Annals of the Kings of Judah? Don't know, don't have the book in front of me. We're in 1 Kings 15 too. So because in 2 Chronicles 13 it says they're written in the story of the prophet Edo. Don't have that book either. Slept with his ancestors, and they buried him in the city of David. Then his son Asa succeeded him. Now it says over in 2 Chronicles chapter 14, verse 1, that his sons in his days, in Asa's days, the land was quiet for 10 years. Yeah. There at this point, the timing, the time distances that take place get confused. So we're doing the best we can, just chronologically, okay? In the 20th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, as Asa began to reign over Judah, he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His mother name was Maacah, daughter of Abishai. So his mother's name was Maacah, daughter of Abishalom. Who else's mother was Maacah, daughter of Abishalom? Abijah. It's his brother.
Or half brother.
Yeah. No, well, yeah. No, they'd be full brothers.
I guess technically.
Asa did what was right in the sight of the Lord, as his father David had done. He put away the illicit priests out of the land and removed all the idols that his ancestors had made. 2 Chronicles 14 adds, he took away the foreign altars and the high places, broke down the pillars, cut down the sacred poles, and commanded Judah to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and to keep the law and the commandment. 2 Chronicles 14, verse 5. He also removed from all the cities of Judah the high places and the incense altars, and the kingdom was quiet under him. He built fortified cities in Judah while the land was quiet. He had no war in those years. The Lord gave him rest. How long did it take him to do that? 10 years? Okay. What it said, he had no war for 10 years earlier. So he said to Judah, let us build these cities and surround them with walls and towers, gates and bars. The land is still ours because we have sought the Lord our God. We have sought him, and he has given us rest on every side. So they built and prospered. Asa had an army of 300,000 from Judah, armed with large shields and spears, and 280,000 troops from Benjamin who carried shields and drew bows. All these were mighty warriors. Now, earlier we read that when Abijah went to war, that he had 400,000 troops. Well, we're up to 580,000 now. So apparently he didn't lose it, or didn't lose a lot. Or there were people that came out of woodwork saying, oh, we're powerful. All right, we're, they're
Joining the winning team.
right, they're soapboxers. Was one of my very, very good friends. I still talk to him to this day. His name is Stephen Huffman. He was the pastor's kid at the church when I was growing, strict church, but he was a bandwagoner. Now he watched TV. We were allowed to watch TV. I wasn't. Stephen, he loves sports, but he only liked the teams that were winning. So it was funny when he would come in one day and say, oh, I love the Dallas Cowboys, and the very next week, oh, I hate the Dallas Cowboys, I love the San Francisco 49ers. Every week. Now, the rest of the acts of Jeroboam, how he warred and how he reigned, are written in the book of the Annals of the Kings of Israel. So that's Jeroboam. Yeah, that's Jeroboam died and swallowed it, right? The time that Jeroboam reigned was 22 years, then he slept with his ancestors, and his son Nadab succeeded him. Now, it said earlier Jeroboam reigned for 20 years, and then it said he died. It's believed that he was injured in battle and was able to survive. I mean, how to resolve that he was able to, he licked his wounds for two more years before he finally succumbed to his injuries. However it works, anyway. Nadab, son of Jeroboam, 1 Kings 15, Arnold. Nadab, yeah, I know, back and forth. Nadab, son of Jeroboam, began to reign over Israel in the second year of King Asa of Judah. He reigned over Israel 2 years. 2 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, walking in the way of his ancestors and the sin that caused Israel to commit, that he caused Israel to commit. So this is the north again. Baasha, son of Ahijah, of the house of Issachar, conspired against him, and Baasha struck him down at Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines. For Nadab and all Israel were laying siege to Gibbethon. So Baasha killed Nadab in the third year of King Asa of Judah and succeeded him. So Nadab, Jeroboam's son, has barely begun to reign when Baasha, one of the generals or whatever, who is in charge of battling the Philistines, takes him out. A military coup, if you will, after only 2 years. And as soon as he was king, he killed all the house of Jeroboam. Remember Ahijah the prophet, not the other Ahijah that we just mentioned, but Ahijah apparently was a popular name like Michael. Ahijah the prophet had sworn to Jeroboam that because of his sin, that his house would die. They would die out. They would all die. So this is that coming to fruition. He left to the house of Jeroboam not one who breathed until he had destroyed it, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by his servant Ahijah Shiloh. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there it is. Because of the sins of Jeroboam that he committed and that it caused Israel to commit, and because of the anger at which he provoked the Lord, the God of Israel. Now, the rest of the acts of Nadab and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Annals of Kings of Israel? Oh, no. There was war between Asa and King Baasha of Israel all their days. Now, it's weird phrasing because it said Asa had 10 years of no war or anything like that. But then Baasha comes and then it's constant war. I would say that they probably had skirmishes with Nadab during that 2-year time frame, but needless to say, it didn't last very long. So, in the third year of King Asa of Judah, let's see, we've already got some time issues there. Baasha, son of Ahijah, began to reign over all Israel at Tirzah. He reigned 24 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, walking the way of Jeroboam and the sin that he caused Israel to commit. So far, we've had a couple of good kings. Well, we've had one good king in the north and one or in the south, sorry, and no good kings in the north. So we are done for today as Baasha comes to power, and he's gonna reign for 24 years. Even being the evil person that he is. And Nadab didn't get a chance. But if Baasha, being a general, has done a military coup and succeeded, what does that say for Baasha? How his reign is going to be? It's going to be militaristic. So for next week, right on time today. Next week, we hear about an Ethiopian invasion, Azariah's prophecy, and Asa's reform, an alliance with Aram against Israel that is eventually condemned, and Elah reigns over Israel, and a third dynasty, Zimri, and then a fourth dynasty, Omri. Samaria becomes the new capital. Ahab reigns over Israel, marries Jezebel, and they worship Baal. Told you, we're getting into Ahab and Jezebel pretty quickly. Asa's disease and ultimate death, sorry, spoiler alert, and Jehoshaphat's reign. But Jehoshaphat, that's a word that most of us have probably said over our lifetime. Holy Jehoshaphat, or something like that. Jehoshaphat. We'll run across a couple of people who have that same, but anyway. So any questions about that?
Does it have to be about that?
Well, it doesn't have to be, but preferably.
Okay.
It'll be a good day. It'll be late.
Nobody else is asking questions.
About the drive
We
home
go to bed.
Oh,
yesterday, with the end of it sounded to me like it was a prophecy for a homeland for Israel.
well, it kind of is. The prophecy, in the lectionary text for this week, the men do that during their Bible study. If you don't know what goes on during men's group. His question is about that. One of the lectionary texts for yesterday was from Elijah, the Valley of Dry Bones, that we're all fairly familiar with. That story is a story of redemption for Israel.
Yes.
At the end of times.
Oh, yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's also used by some evangelical denominations to as their way of resolving the fact of people who are cremated. Well, how do they end up with bodies? You know, how do they come up from the grave if, you know, during a rapture or whatever? Well, they follow that particular story of the dust becoming bone and the bones, you know, having sinews and flesh and breath. And, you know, that's how that happens. It's a rebirth. And that's why we hear in John's revelation about the new heavens and the new earth. It's a rebirth, a recreation. And therefore, Israel being the chosen, they will also be recreated.
Well, that have me for over 24 hours.
Well, I'm sorry that it
That's all
doesn't.
right.
For all those listening at home, we'll see you next week. We do not plan on meeting Easter Sunday, but we'll talk about that next week. We'll figure that out because I'm gonna be stuck here for a couple of hours probably, not doing anything. So because we're having a sunrise service at 7:30, you know, so about an hour after the sun actually rises. On Easter Sunday, and then we've got a couple of hours before, well, an hour and a half before Sunday school technically would start, and then another 45 minutes to an hour after that before church starts. So if y'all want to have Sunday school on the day, we can. I wasn't planning on it, but I've got the lesson kind of laid out. I just have to go and add all
Next
these.
week is not Easter.
No, Palm Sunday's next week.
Yeah.
So
You gotta have
Palm's next Sunday.
You gotta have the sunrise service up.
Looking at the park, weather permitting. Last year we had to bring it inside because it was drizzling. But the plan is to have it outside.
No chance you want the puppets.
Not for that.
Well,
Okay, well, let me shut this off. Say bye, everybody.
Bye.
I,